So it's
super crazy.
but I think we'll
So
go
all
through
yours.
it tonight. And I'll just
Yeah.
kind of, oops. Just realize that there are only 4 or 5 classes left. So my last class they do class presentations the whole time. It's like, well, remainder of the semester,
2 Tuesdays or something.
Yeah, so remainder of the semester, just work on your final project. So pretty much done.
I just got credentials from Andy, so it's like, oh, I'm gonna rush this one in. So it works out. It actually works out because we can get that information.
Did he come in and do it?
He did 1. He usually does 2, and that's what one of his concerns is that he wanted to do a second one, but I think we can.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's not that much time.
Yeah, I think it's just exposure. So it's like just being able to play with and say, oh yeah, this is this, and that's all. That's all I'm looking for. So,
And these guys aren't going to be customers. Somebody might.
yeah, but that's part of this plan.
Sure, they get a job at local planning or something.
Well, very development. Short point to a site search. Those here. What do we have to pay off because this particular property?
The whole foods here.
Exactly.
There's so many regulations that have to skirt.
So it's kind of interesting. But we're on the board now. This way, they usually start.
I'm not stuff to show and remind them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think it'll start with the.
It's funny though, I have several projects that are similar. Digital media studies 101, so it's just an intro to digital media. They're doing similar. I mean, they're going around campus. They're going around campus and collecting, data, pictures or 3D or whatever of stuff on campus, and they're using Omeka. It's a content management system, CMS, but it's geared towards libraries and museums.
Oh,
so it's
somebody mentioned that.
So it's very simplified. So it's not like WordPress, something like a Drupal or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Somebody goes
yeah, but it's really simplified. It's like really focused on capturing objects and metadata about them. So it's really simplified. They're going back to the way.
I think somebody mentioned that before in one of the meetings. It might have been Charles.
Yeah, he uses it. He uses it.
That's kind of why I thought it might be him, because he has been to some of the meetings.
Oh, the archive.
Yeah.
Archive. He's a child.
Yeah, it makes me hungry. I'm gonna see that. I give him a hard time about that. Then again, I didn't give any suggestions, so I can't.
Yeah, I figured there are enough cooks in that kitchen. I'm staying out of the archive stuff. But we use a lot because it's pretty simple. We can teach students really quickly, and again, it really focuses on the metadata.
Who runs the site? Oh, just you just download it.
Yeah, it's open source.
Open source, okay.
So
you guys have a server then?
Yeah, so we historically we put it up on a server, but that new service that we signed up for, the Digital Scholar service. Yeah, but it's we use the library's subscribe to a hosted web service now, and it's got a one-click installer for it. So like any student or faculty can get their own web space, and you can spin up Drupal or WordPress, or they use Installatron. But they have like 100 different apps that you can just one-click install. I thought it was Amazon. They actually use something that's centered in Toronto. It's some hosted web service.
Trying to rewrite the
Save a little, save a little extra money. But it's nice because people can include benefit services through the library. It's all kind of under the IT security regimen, so it's nobody has access. The faculty member can't. Anything they need to do, they need to ask us to do it for them, and they can't migrate. So this you basically get your own. You log into your cPanel, so you can go in through terminal, do whatever you want. It's got backups and everything. So
that's the best key for
it. Backups. It's got 30 days of backup, so that's good.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask my questions now that I sent you earlier?
Let's let Blair give his spiel, and then I'll spiel. Well, is that okay?
Yeah, but like not currently.
I mean, like, if he did it now, we can forward. Go ahead.
All right.
Okay. No, this is when I usually start.
Okay, so hopefully some of you were here last time I came in. We're kind of continuing on with the project from before. So you're going to go around campus and use your phone or your smart device to collect some GPS data. Looks like only a couple people have done it so far, which is fine. It's not super time consuming or anything. So you have plenty of time to do that. The point is that once you've collected the data, you can create web applications or web maps based on that data. And you should have all gotten, or most of you have gotten, an invitation for ArcGIS Online. I think there's one or two that I need to set up for some people. If you don't have the invitation, let us know. We can resend it. Maps. Let me know and I can yeah, forward it. And I can go in and resend it. So you're going to get an instructions on this. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what the application is, but you'll actually get an assignment that kind of walks you through these steps as well. So you don't need to worry about every little thing I'm doing, but this is just kind of expose you guys to it, and so I can show you how it generally works. So this will be your sign-in here, and that's most people it's your net ID and then underscore uRochester should be. The URL, which again is in the doc, is urochester.maps.arcgis.com, and I'll take you here. Convoluted password. Of course not. Try it again. Rochester. I'm not a very good typist. No caps lock. There we go. Okay, so this is it's a pretty extensive set of tools, and we're just going to be using like a very small portion of what you can do in this. You all now have access to it, so if you want to continue using this after this class, you can feel free to do that. And if you're really interested in it, they have some training videos and some other things on it. I've had other students that just kind of looked at the intro training video. It's like 45 minutes or something like that, and they're pretty well expert users at this point. So any mapping you want to do, you can feel free to use this. It's broken down here at the top with the menu. We don't really need to worry about gallery or scene or organization or any of that. We're really going to be interested mostly in groups and map. So you guys should all have a pretty simplified setup. I have a ton of data and groups and everything in here. But when you guys go to groups, you should only see one group in there, and that's the group for this class, which is this CSE 108 class. And if you click on this, this will show you all the data that's shared with the whole group. There's not much in here. There's just a point layer, and this is where people will be entering their GPS coordinates. So in the previous class, I showed you how to load this map into your ArcGIS collector, and it will already have the point layer in there that will allow you to collect your data. So what we're going to do for the next part of the assignment is to take those points and create a web map out of it. So you'll do that in the map tab. So if you hit map, it'll bring up it'll bring you up a view like this, which is just kind of your blank map. So there are a few things you can do here. You can switch your base map. And this will kind of be up to you guys, but the base map is just what's showing in the background. This is just kind of an aesthetic choice for you guys. You can do whatever you want. Feel free to be creative with that. And then we're going to add the point layer that has the points that you guys capture around campus. Now I can follow up with more details later. Earlier today I had problems adding the layer that you guys are using, so I had to make a copy of it. But you can try either layer. I'll try the original layer and see if it works. So under the add menu, you get a bunch of options here. We're just going to do the search for layers option. Again, this is written out in the instructions. And by default, it says my organization. So this is everybody at U of R. This is all the data. You don't need to look. You can browse through all that, but it's a real hassle. It's easier just under in, just look at the group for the class. And you'll see there are 2 of them here. I'm going to try, this is the real layer. I'm going to try to add that and see if it's working now. I tried to add it earlier. Yeah, and this is all it did.
Oh, so it didn't even generate it.
No, it just sits there and does this. This is just a copy of that one. I think I probably blew it up now because I tried to do that one. No, that one worked. So I'll just say done adding layers. You might have to do this one that's called view. You can try either one to work. You'll see that it put a point here. It's actually a bunch of points, but it looks just like one because they're zoomed way out. I'm going to zoom in on that. With any of these, most web mapping applications, so Google, Bing, etc., if you hold down the Shift key and click and drag, you'll get a marquee zoom. Just a trick a lot of people don't know. Instead of having to keep hitting the plus button, you can just draw a little box and it will zoom in on that. Now you can see our points starting to spread out. When you guys do this, you'll only be able to see your own points, or you should only be able to see your own points. I can see everybody's because I'm set up as an administrator. But this is some of the data around campus that people have collected. If I click on it, you'll see the information in there, and then it's got the photo attachments like the previous instructions had. Again, you'll only be able to see your own. You can edit your own as well. So once you get in here, if you need to change things, add more data, add additional photos, you can do that through this interface. So at this point, we've got this in here. If you come over here, you can change the appearance of the points. So I can hit the change style button. And it defaults saying show location only. So that's saying, okay, everything, just show me where the dots are. And if I want to change what the points look like, I can click that and I can click symbols. And I can say, oh, I want it to be whatever, blue diamond instead. There we go. Very tiny blue diamond. Make it bigger. So you can experiment with this. You know, again, kind of do whatever you think is going to make your map look the best. There we go. Got some blue diamonds there. You can also, this is set on location only, but you can switch it and say, I want to have the symbols look different based on the attributes in there. So you could do it on notes if you put what kind of feature it was. Like maybe you did statues, or if you want to do place name, then each one's going to look, each point will look different based on what's in that attribute field. So you guys can kind of just experiment with this. Doesn't really matter, but again, it'll it's all part of the map making process, so you can have a little creativity there. I'll just go back to the dots. Doesn't really matter. So in addition to the dots that are on there, you can add your own kind of hand-drawn features, which you should do as part of the map. And to do that, you just hit add and do add map notes. So that'll kind of add just like a scratch layer. They call it a notes layer. You can call it whatever you want. I'll just say create. And in this layer, I can then go in and add other features. So I can put some point features here, and just call it this point, and then you can put whatever in here, and then you can put links to images and other stuff in there. And then I'll just say close. So there's my point. You can also draw lines, and again, this is going to be in kind of in relation to the points that you've captured. So maybe you have you've captured a bunch of points that represent things you see on your walk to class in the morning or something. Maybe you want to draw a line feature that maps out your route that you walk, you know, past your points. And then you can go in there and just say, you know, my trip to class. Put any information in there. So you can add any features you want here. And I think while it's not specified in the instructions what you need to add in there, you should definitely add some extra context here rather than just points on a map. It's not really going to get you full credit for the project. You can be creative, you know, and obviously it doesn't really need to be accurate or realistic. I don't think he's going to check and see if this is actually the path you take to class, so you can kind of invent your own. They also have polygon tool, so you can draw, you know, little areas and say, you know, favorite study area or whatever. So this is where you're going to want to author your map. Oh, you can also change the symbology on any of this, just like the other things. So I hit change symbol, and I can change the color of the fill, and I can change the color of the outline, the transparency, etc. So you should feel free, again, to kind of take some artistic license with this and be creative, because I can't scroll down to the OK button. So once you've created your map, at this point it's just called My Map. You've got your points on here. You've got the features that you've drawn. You need to save the map. And you can save it in the default folder, which will be your folder. Give it a title that makes sense, you know, that relates to whatever your map is about. It requires tags. So tags are just things that make it easier to search for your content. Again, for you, it doesn't really matter. But I'll just put map in there. You can really put anything in there. Put a description in here. So I'll just
those tags will search for everybody in the UR, not just there.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I mean, you'll be in the group, so you'll be able to see them anyways. But the tags are pretty useful. Like a lot of, you know, if you're a government agency and you're doing, you know, uploading your crime statistic maps or whatever, you'd put, you know, city of Rochester would be a tag, crime. You'd put all those in there so when people search, they can actually find the data. Not as important for something like this, but it's required. So you hit save, and it says saving to my content. So this map is now saved, and the next time you come back here, it'll open the last used map that you have. You can always do multiple maps, and you can go to content to find those maps. So content has all your data there. So if I go there and I want to get back to that map that I've done. Eventually. Maybe. There we go. Come on, buddy.
Okay, we usually have projector problems.
Yeah. It's always something.
It's always something.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this will open.
And I'll be able to publish a link, right?
Yep. All right. Let me try. Let me just try going back to the map tab. Oh, yeah, there we go. I suspect it's because I tried to add that busted layer. Okay, so once you've got your map saved, this is what they call just a web map. You're pretty much the only one that can see this. Other people in the group can see it, but it's really more of an authoring environment. I mean, you've got your, you can change the look and feel of it. You can add and remove features, etc. The final product of what we're doing for this assignment is an actual published map that, something that you would put out on the web for everybody to see. So once the map has been saved, you can hit the share button. Need to save the map. I just saved the map. I'm not really sure why it's making me save the map again. All right. Hit the share button, and you'll get this window here. Go ahead and share it to University of Rochester. Don't worry, nobody really uses this. This is going to be the link just to the. Since I'm logged in, it'll probably just to kind of like the default ugly web map. But what you all will do is do this create a web app, which will make a nice finished fancy dancy map. So they have all these templates that you can choose from. For you. I'll just grab the basic one since it looks like things aren't really loading very well right now anyways. Oh, there we, yeah. Wah, wah. So once you've selected what the viewer that you want, you can hit preview and it will just kind of give you a quick look at what the generic view would look like. You can go through, click on different ones and hit preview and see if you like what it looks like. And once you found one that you like, you just hit create web app. Let's see, it needs a summary. It says optional, so you can leave that off. Save in the folder. Share the app. Yes, done. So it says creating the web app. Let's see if this works or if it just crashes. Okay, looks like it's gonna work. Okay. So once you get to this part, this is what the app is basically going to look like. Now, hopefully yours would look a little nicer than what I've done here. But at this point, you'll have the configuration options for the viewer. And again, you can take a couple minutes to come through. You can actually put a splash screen on there, which will be like a little intro screen where you can put a title in there and some content that people will give people an introduction to your map, which you can do. Your title. We'll replace the My Map title with this. You can put a subtitle on it. So definitely go through and actually put meaningful stuff in here. The theme is kind of the colors, kind of the look and feel of it. So I can say, oh, I want a different color blue for my thing and whatever. Change this around. Again, spend some time and experiment with this. Make something that looks nice. Options. This is where you can turn on and off the tools. You probably don't need a whole lot of different options on here, but again, this is something where you can experiment with it. And just turn tools on and off. I'll turn off the print tool. I'm not going to need to print this. And I'll turn off the searching because we don't really need to do any address searching on here just for the heck of it. I'll hit save. And then we can launch it. So here's the final map. These things don't really have any data, but you should have data in yours. And then these are the points where if you click on them, you'll get all the information from there, including the photos that you guys take. And then to submit it, you just need to submit the either this URL, that one will work, or if you have the share button on here, they'll give you a nice little short URL there that you can share. You should also be able to go to the content and get the URL under my content as well. That's basically it. Again, most of that is covered in the instructions. They're pretty step by step. As you can see, it really it only took me about 10-15 minutes to do that whole thing. But it looks pretty crummy. So it's pretty obvious when you only take 10 minutes to do it. So you should probably put a little more thought and effort into creating a nice map since they're graded and mine's not graded.
Yeah, but one thing I want to point out also is that a lot of these web app templates can be very elaborate also.
Mm-hmm.
There's some that you can search for that do very specific things. And that's, so my recommendation, if you have a particular problem, just take a look at what templates might be available so that you can actually use some of the things that somebody has done. Typically, a lot of people who are in the mapping business do the same thing over and over, so there's a good chance that somebody may have already put together something that you have.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and if they haven't, you can actually. I haven't personally played with creating web app, but I think it's a web map app.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you can also build from scratch.
Yeah.
Here. The templates are just a much nicer way. They already have kind of the bells and whistles and the layouts.
Sort of get you easily started, but you can do elaborate on some of the functionality.
Yeah, they have some really nice ones, which again probably not for this, necessarily for this class, but they have some nice cascading ones where you can intersperse different maps with text and just swiping side by side maps, and so they have lots of different stuff. You're welcome to use the web app builder. That'll just take you, it's just more generic. You don't have the nice template, so you have to kind of make all those decisions about colors and placement and everything, but you can customize it a little bit more. And then for the really advanced user, you can actually download, you guys won't do this, but you could actually download the code and like customize the heck out of it if you really wanted to. Yeah, it's just, mostly JavaScript libraries. Yeah. Any questions about this? I know it was pretty quick, but it's not really that hard to do. Sometimes you can get lost in there, but you can always just kind of back out and start over. It's not really a big deal. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Blair.
And yeah, if anybody has any issues, just send them my way.
I will.
I think they'll be all right, and I'll try to nail down whatever the problem is with that layer.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
So,
I might just remove that from the group so they can only use the one that works.
okay.
All right.
So Emma had a question. Can you repeat the question, please?
So, for lab B,
Yep.
you have to create, you said in it says like write a small program. Do you have to do like different files?
Yes, I recommend you doing a file for each one, just because usually if something is working and you try to put something that's not working in the same file, you sometimes won't know which of those two pieces will run. So it's good practice to keep your functions separate.
And also in the instructions it says that you have to output a file using, what's that?
So I believe the one example, let's go into idle, that is that one of the last ones or one of the first ones? Oh, one of the first ones. Okay, so let's wait for idle to come up. And all that is just to print the file to the screen. So we can either do this interactively, or we can actually just create the file itself. Also, I'll just create it right here, new file. So I will say A equals 10, 20, 30. And all I'm looking for here is for I in A, print I. And you would save this as print data. Yeah. Print data, okay. Print data.py, save, and it should run after I say run module. And that's it. So fairly straightforward. Nothing, don't read too much into the instructions. The idea is that you actually run, get these to run, and you'll have little pieces here. Yes. What you want to do is take the Python file, drag it into your Evernote report, and it'll be in there. If you want to actually highlight certain pieces in the Python code, you can, if it's small enough, you can cut and paste it. Or if there's a section that you want to talk a little more about, I would cut and paste that section. You did not attach the file. It's usually a good idea to attach the file just for redundancy, okay? Because one thing that can happen is that if you happen to cut and paste the code into the node itself, it's possible for you to actually inadvertently modify that, and then now it's like, okay, why isn't this code not working? You may have actually, inadvertently inserted a space or something. And one thing that some of you may have noticed is that Python is very sensitive to spacing. If your spacing is off by 1, it'll say, oh, I did not expect an indent here. So it's always a good idea to take the file that was working and drag it into the note just as a backup, all right? Because again, if you put the code right into the note area, it's possible to modify it. And that's something that you, depending on how careful you are, may or may not be helpful for you, so. Other questions? Yes.
For number 8, you have to create a file.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we show that we created that file?
So what you can do is just to say edit new file. So the data file. So I can say something like 10, 20, 30, and then save that out as data.txt. So in this case, we just want to actually right?
Yeah.
And then you can drag that also into your report and saying this is the file that I created.
Also, we don't have to get code.
Does that make sense? Because what you want to do now is you want to read in this file into Python. So we can either do that interactively or as a program. Anybody have a choice? We'll go through that also. So if we wanted to do it interactively, we would do this. We would say file equals open data.txt for reading. And we would say string data equals file.read. We did the, so we just, let's look at the string data. As you can see, it read it in, and it's showing you the carriage returns right here. So /n's are known as carriage returns. So it's actually something that the terminal interprets and does for you. But we need to actually split this up into individual words. So let's call this words. String data dot split. Words. So now the question here is, can we actually do math on this information? And the answer is no, because these are still strings. So we need to convert them into a floating point values. And we do that by going through the following steps. You would say numbers. We start with a blank list. And then we would then say for I in words, we would say numbers equals float of I. Actually, numbers plus float of I. So what does this mean? It just says I'm going to take this list that I originally started with, and I'm going to sequentially include each one of these elements here. But before I actually include it, I will cast it or convert it into a floating point value. So now if we actually execute that and we look at numbers, you have those sequential numbers right there. Right? And you can do things with this now. You can actually, so there's a built-in, there's actually a built-in function called sum. I've asked you to write your own, but just so you know, there is a sum function inside Python, and I can just simply say sum numbers. It will take care of that. So there's 3 steps here that you have to worry about when you're reading in any sort of data file. There are some other libraries which will take care of all these things for you, but at the most basic configuration, you have to go through this process of opening the file, reading in all the information as a string, okay? And depending on what you need to do, you have to split that string up into individual elements, whether they be words or whether they be numbers. And if you're dealing with numbers, you have the extra step of actually having to convert those numbers or those strings into numbers. So this is what we're doing in this area right here. So you can put all this together into a file. Let's actually do that just for, so in this case, let's say file equals open data.txt string data equals file.read. And even though I'm not putting comments here, you should be doing that out of just to remind yourself, what is it are these lines actually doing? And that's okay if you don't quite understand what's happening. If you don't, then that's a signal for you to actually go back and ask yourself, do I know what this particular line is doing? Because on the exam, I'm not expecting you to know Python, but I am expecting you to be able to look at some Python and understand what's going on, right? And that's something that only comes with actually going through the problem commenting the pieces, and then trying to understand what's going on. I'm not going to give you anything that's a little that you haven't seen before, right? Okay, so let's finish this up. Let's say words, numbers equals, all right, and then we're going to say for I in words, numbers equals numbers plus float of I. And let's just say print numbers in this case. Let's call this read numbers. Run it. Go. Okay. Yes.
You're not screen sharing.
I am not screen sharing. I am not. I thought I was. Okay. All right. So this is just one little program, but what is one of the issues associated with these kinds of little programs that I already am having you do is that they're very fixed. And one of the reasons I do that is so that you can get something working and then later generalize it. So what might you do to generalize this kind of program? So if you look at this, well, let's go back to the sum function. Well, we've already talked about the sum function, but it's something that I usually include as one of the questions, and that is how do you make a routine a function? So, Emma, is there anything else that you want me to cover before I move on?
So, and for when we create count data,
Yep.
we have to use print data.
You have to use information from print data. What you can typically do for each one of those is just copy that same value.
All in like file.
I would do it in separate files. Okay. Here's where I'm going with this. Suppose I wanted to. So let's start with count data. So let's create a file. Call it count, and we say C equals for count data. I would say something like A equals 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And if I say count that, you would say C equals 0 for I in A. C equals C plus 1. Print C, right? You see that makes sense to you. I can run this. And I would call this count data. .py. I'll save that. And that works. I'll do another one. I'll have another file, new file. Okay. This time let's do some data. I would say A equals 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And for S equals 0.0, for I in A, S equals S plus. We're doing a sum, which I, okay. Print S. Okay. So that pretty straightforward. Let's run it. I call this count. Oh no, sum data. There we go. It ran it. Okay. So you look at that, it's like, well, that's not very useful. You know, it's always running the same thing. But the reason I have you do this is so that you can convince yourself that the process you're doing makes sense, that the numbers all line up and work fine. Because the next step that you really want to do with this specific type of little functions here is to create them, is to make them into functions. And that's what I'll do next. We'll actually, let's create a new file. Let's call this stats. You want to create a definition for your own count function. You want to say C equals 0, C equals C plus 1, and actually no. For I in X, C equals C plus 1. Okay. Now, some people are tempted to put a print statement here, but what we will actually do is return C. Okay. Think of this as being the same as count data, but a little more flexible. Because what we're doing here is we're actually saying, okay, in count data, I had to tell it what the list was in order for it to do this. What I'm showing you now here is a way to generalize this so that you can, doesn't matter what kind of list you pass on to the function, it will run it. So let's actually save this out. And we won't, we'll just assume that this one runs. Actually save it. I will call this one stats.py. So when it runs, it really shouldn't do anything. Yep. Because all you did is define the function. If we say import stats, what it'll do is it'll actually go to this file that I just created. Because import assumes that it's a Python. Okay. It assumes it's Python. Now I can say, let's print numbers. Oops. Did I get rid of that? Oh. Let's do this. Range 1,000. If I look at that, it's an element. It's a list of 1,000 elements. Now I can say print my count of A. And it went through and did that. So as you can see, you've defined a function here that does the same thing that count data does. So now let's define another function in here. And the reason I like separate pieces is that it makes it easier to check things. It is possible, however, in this case, to put it in the same file. But I tend to recommend that people keep it separate so that, because sometimes if there's a problem here, if I put another function here, let's call it my sum. Okay. We would say S equals 0.0 for I in X. S equals S plus I. Return S. So these two are different functions. This is self-contained. This is self-contained. So now if I run that again, let's see if it saves it. Go ahead.
I'm a bit confused because for data, you just have to-
Run that by me again. So for the count data, the list.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm very lost.
Oh,
Does this come from-
you're using the len function?
Yeah.
No. That's what I'm having you do is actually you write your own function to do the counting.
Why?
Because I want you to learn how to use the for loop.
Very,
Well, here's where I'm going with this. So now suppose I want to create, sorry, not print. Suppose now I wanted to create the average. Okay. How would I create an average function? Let's call it my average or my mean. Okay. How would we do this? That's right. You would say answer equals my sum x divided by my count x. Return answer. You didn't do these functions for this, you would be writing all those little for loops for each of these pieces, right? So it's a very clean process. Now if I said, okay, define, let's create a variance function. Okay. And I don't know, I can't rattle the equation off, but you know that you're going to be using a count function, a sum function, a mean function, and also probably a sum square function. What this does is it'll allow you to create a program that is much more readable if you break it up into these small pieces. If you, in fact, if you try to write a variance function without using a variance routine without using functions, you'll note that you'll probably end up with a very large piece of code that's very hard to manage. Okay, and that's why I'm trying to stress that one of the things that you want to learn early in programming is the concept of a function so that you can modularize your program and you can solve a specific problem so that you're not trying to have some sort of big spaghetti code and trying to figure out where the problem might be. So
does X,
X in this, go ahead. X is just for this case, it's a list of numbers, but X for each one of these is just a what's known as a dummy variable. In other words, it just holds whatever you put into it. Okay, so if you look back here, I should be able to say, oops, print my sum of A is, oh. Not defined. Well, let's try this again. A equals range. So range is yet another function in Python, which allows you to create a list of sequential numbers. So if I say print my sum of A, so if you want to create the mean function, we can now say print my sum of A divided by my count of A. Typo on my part. Try that again. Print my sum of A divided by my count of A. So let's take out the variance part of here. And what I want you to see here is that whenever you say import stats, from stats import star. Whenever you do that, what these commands are doing is it's actually going to a file called stats, going in and defining all these functions.
I ran this code. Well,
This one?
when I ran the top one and the sub one, and I had when I ran those two,
Mhm.
like numbers, it didn't add.
Did you say print?
I did. It said like in it function count, and then it just gives like a jumble of it.
I have to see your screen. What do you mean by jumbled
Like
letters?
actual-
That was just a yawn, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll have to see it because when you mean by jumble of letters, which one is this for defining a function, or what did you do here?
To do what you did.
And but it's obvious it's not what I did because you.
Makes sense.
Okay, well, so let's step back then. Where was it that you had? So did you do this? You typed all this, or
Yeah.
okay? So did you say? So you did import stats?
What is that?
So remember we did import strings, import math. So right now, if I did this, if I said, I'm sorry. So if I say sqrt, which is the function for square root, if I say 4, what do you expect it to give you? It doesn't, because Python doesn't have that defined in it. So what you have to do is you have to say import math, and then from math, import sqrt. Now when I do that, oops. Now when I do that, I can say print sqrt 4. That comes up with the answer that you need. The math library is not automatically downloaded into Python, and that's where the import command comes in.
Does it not know what's that?
Def as in for which?
DEF.
Oh, it does, but that's for the things that you created here. So we put this in a file called stats. So that's why you have the thing here that says import stats. Okay. Well, that's why I start with something straightforward, which is to create the count data, sum data, all those little pieces, so that you can convince yourself that you understand what's going on internally for each one of these. So for the count function, you know that you have a variable, you go through the list of numbers, and then you increment C.
So I haven't created those files.
Which files?
I haven't, like, I'm making this in the someday file.
And that's why I said you want to keep them separate.
I was keeping each thing. So I had to paste things from previous files. Is that how it works?
I'll have to see what you're doing because I can't. Oh no, that's fine. Programming, people get lost programming, and that's why you keep doing it, so that you get more familiar with it. It's very much the same way as you start like I said before, you start a language that you don't know, and you just parrot out what you've heard in order to learn the language. But after a while, meaning will come to each of those things that you say. You can ask that of any non-English speakers. You know, it's something that they had to do is repeat. And the best way to actually, from what I've been told, to learn English is what? Not only that, but not only that, close. Watch TV. Yeah, no, that's what a lot of people that I've spoken to who learned English as a second language at an older age said they watch TV, and programming is going to be the same way. You know, if you don't, what's that? You should watch TV. Yeah, I think you'll get a lot of programming done there. All right, so I don't mind beating this dead horse to the ground. I want to sort of understand where. First of all, if you guys are lost, raise your hand. Okay, what part were you lost in? And that's what I need to know, because. So.
How do you open Python?
What's that?
How do you open Python?
How do you open Python? Okay, idle. No, it's idle. Well, I'm not sure. Okay, so step back. That's very confusing because you're looking too much into it. What I want you to look at are the simple ones such as this. Well, so in that, it's a lot of code, but you've seen it. You should have seen it.
I mean, I've seen a song.
Yeah. So let's actually go through that really quickly.
Is this all one question? Like, I'm very.
Yes, it's one question. So the way that particular question usually comes in is I give it to you as a straight program, kind of like count data. All right. And what you need to do is you need to convert it into a function. So here's the very simplest form of that particular exam question. All right. Here's the very simplest form. So I would do the following. So let's create a little program. Print hello. Okay, I'll make it hello world.
Well, I wasn't saying.
All right. Make a program out of that. Okay. I run that. What's that? That's your program. Print hello world. So this is, let's call this hello.py or a print hello. So if I run this, it just does that. Everybody's with me so far, right? Okay. So yes.
This is idle?
Yes, this is idle. Okay.
Because in the spaces, is that, are we like,
What was that again?
are we filling these like blank spaces in?
For a comment. So what you have to do is you have to say, what is this line doing? Okay. So you should be able to read the code and say, okay, what is this part doing? Right.
That's what we're filling in.
But also, here's the question is two parts. One is you be able to read this program, okay? You can look at this program and say, oh, okay, I know what that program is doing. It's printing hello world. Okay. Now, let's create a function of that. Let's create a function that will print any word that you give it. Right now, this program is stuck by just printing hello world, right? It can't print anything else. So one of the questions I will ask is, given this program, how do you write a function that will print something? So what I want you to do is to be able to do something like this, where you would say, A equals hello world, and then call another function that will say something like print my print A. All right. How do we do that? Well, so this is creating a function. So far, everybody with me so far? Okay, where? We haven't done that yet. I'm just showing that to you, that this is how we want it to work. Right. So let's create a new file. Yes.
When I wrote hello world, apparently it's a syntax error about the syntax.
For which one?
For hello world. It's highlighted in red. Syntax error about it.
Did you put quotes around it? Double quotes, single quotes? All right. So we haven't defined this yet. So let's create a new program. And this we'll call this my print. All right. So we want to define my print. And I'll just put any words here. So we want to print anything that goes in there. So what will we do next? Okay.
There is one the space after the bracket.
Space out these two? No. These are what are known as dummy variables. In other words, it's just a placeholder. Okay. So I will run this now, just to make sure that everything is proper. And I'll call this my print. Okay. My print import star. Now I can say my print of A. Oops. A is not defined. Actually, we're supposed to return something here. So what you've done here is you created a function that should be able to take any element now. So if I say B equals a quick brown box, print B. I can say something like C equals my print B. Good question, because I just said return, and what you really want here is to not either print it. And this is what most people will try to do. So in the count function, for instance, some people are tempted to put C equals C plus 1 and then print C, right? What you don't want, you don't want your functions to really print anything. You just want it to return things to you. Yeah, typically you don't want to print inside the function unless there's like an error. So I can actually make this even smaller by simply saying, okay, I don't really want that. I just want to return the words. Okay. So let's do something different here where I would say answer equals any words dot upper. And this time we want to return answer. So we should be able to say print my print of B. Is that sort of making some sense? Yes. Sure.
Putting in import my print.
What's that? Import my print? Did not work for you? Where did you save your? Where did you save your program? The desktop? Okay, so the problem is that it may not know where to find that function. Typically, you want it to be wherever you started Python. Okay, so wherever you type, that's typically one of the problems people run into, is that it can't find that particular program. If you have problems with that, I would suggest starting the program, starting Python instead of using idle, because when you create a new terminal, you kind of know where you are. So if I create a new terminal, and this is where some of the Unix commands come in handy, because if I create a new window here, and I type Python, actually get out of Python. Print working directory tells me where I am, and that's where the program should be sitting in, which is not the desktop, okay? If you wanted to use the desktop, you would have to do change directory to the desktop. And that's where you would start your Python program. You can do it in idle. Idle, I don't recall. You might have to give it a paths to where to look for functions. Okay, but it's okay to be lost at this point. Programming is not something that you pick up in in a few weeks. But what I want people to do is be able to at least reproduce some of the programs that we have. And I think as you do it, things will slowly come to it'll congeal a little bit. But so this is about the simplest program I can come up with that that hopefully helps you with regard to a function. I'll create another small one. Let's create one. Let's call this one def add 2, and you'll have a value x comma y, and all you want to do is say answer equals x plus y. All right. You may say, well, that's kind of silly. Well, it is silly, but it does illustrate the fact that I can make something that just simply adds 2 numbers. I can make whatever it is in between this and the return statement as complex as I want it to be. So let's actually run this. Oh yes, you are correct. I do need a colon after that. Okay. Run module. And I'll say okay. Let's call this add 2.py. Okay. So we'll now say a equals 2, b equals 3, and print add as to A, comma, B.
So how come you didn't have to make it X and Y?
Because X and Y are just dummy variables. Think of them as containers. So because you can put in anything here, these are simply just I can make this here. I can do this. I can say dog, comma, cat. Right? They're just what are known as dummy variables. In other words, they don't really mean anything until the function actually gets used. So likewise, we have to say dog plus cat. All right? And we have to run that. And by running this, it actually defines that function. So let's see if A is still O. A equals 5, B equals 6. Print add 2, A comma B. So even though I call them dog and cat, they're nonsensical. They're just holders there because now what I can do is I can put anything in these two. I can say D equals 1,000, E equals 2,000, and I can just say print add D comma E. So as you can see, add 2, yeah, D comma E. As you can see, it's a lot more flexible because you can give it different types of variables, and it can do a calculation and return a value back to you, right? Okay, I think we're done for today. If somebody goes to tonight's lab, please Slack me if there's no TA there. Mio, I think, was not feeling well, so I sent out a message to the rest of the TAs to see if somebody can cover her. I have not heard anything, so there may not be somebody there. If there isn't, Slack me and I will come over and help you guys out. Yes. Yes. Did you send me your?
Just did it again in class.
Okay, let me just check that out, and I'll. Can you just hold off until? Okay.
If we already gave you like sharing rights, and we made it, do we have to send it to you again?
Yes. Okay. Just for me to. Let me just stop this.